The chamber of the Galactic Council glowed with silver and blue light as towering alien leaders filled the hall with their voices rising in cruel laughter that echoed against walls carved from crystal older than empires and older than memory. And they laughed not at one another, but at the single fragile figure who stood at the center, surrounded by shadows, and judgment for that figure was human. They called humanity fragile, emotional, and weakest species of skin and bone, with no claws, no armored hides, no wings, no natural weapons to survive among the stars. And so they mocked them, declaring humans were a species fit only for servitude. Their words carried like venom through the hall, for they believed it with all their pride and with all their arrogance. The human diplomat stood firm, though his body trembled, though sweat ran down his brow, though the eyes of 1,000 alien warlords bore into him. He spoke with a voice heavy, yet calm, asking only for peace and respect. He asked that Earth be given a place among the stars, not as prey, not as slaves, but as equals who wish to build bridges instead of walls. His words flowed like water, carrying hope even into that cold place. Yet the council did not hear hope. They heard weakness, and weakness was something they despised. They chose not to listen, not to debate, not to compromise. Instead, they chose cruelty, for cruelty was the only language they respected, and they made of him a public example before the galaxy to break the spirit of Earth and to show all others that no one may question the will of the council. The alien rulers whispered among themselves, speaking of punishment that would be remembered for ages. They wanted not silence, but humiliation. They wanted the galaxy to watch and learn that humans should never again raise their voices with demands of respect. And so the sentence was declared with no mercy, with no hesitation. The diplomat who begged for peace was to be erased before all who watched. The chamber grew silent as the sentence was carried out, the sound of laughter replaced by the hum of energy fields, and the diplomat fell with a cry that would echo across human memory for generations, a cry not of fear, but of sorrow and betrayal. He had come with words of peace, yet found only the fire of cruelty, and in that moment the galaxy believed it had crushed humanity beneath its heel. Across alien worlds, crowds gathered before great screens, watching the fall of the human envoy. Many cheered, others scoffed, some remained indifferent, but none imagined that this moment would one day mark their greatest mistake, for they thought humanity would bow in shame. They thought Earth would collapse under grief and humiliation. They thought silence would mean defeat and surrender. But silence was not surrender. Silence was a storm gathering beyond sight. Silence was fury waiting to break. And while the galaxy celebrated its mockery of man, the people of Earth lowered their heads, not in shame, but in rage, unspoken rage, burning hotter than suns. In hidden bases, leaders of Earth replayed the cruel images again and again, their hearts twisting with grief, yet also hardening into resolve. They whispered not of surrender, but of vengeance, not of begging, but of justice. And their whispers grew into plans, and their plans grew into strategies. Alien generals continued to laugh, declaring that no human fleet could ever stand against their armadas. They compared human strategy to board games of children. They dismissed humanity as blind to the ways of war, yet in the silence of Earth, human minds were learning every weakness, every blind spot, every arrogance the aliens had so proudly revealed. The galaxy spread whispers that humanity was weak, predictable, blind to true war, yet the humans studied every broadcast, every record of alien war history, every boast made in arrogance, each word a mockery, became fuel, each insult became a weapon sharpened in silence. As weeks passed, the alien rulers believed Earth had been broken. They believed the humans had accepted their place. They saw no retaliation, no threats, no movement. And so their arrogance only grew stronger, their laughter only louder. But beneath the oceans of Earth, deep in the mountains, hidden in the void of space, ships were being built faster than ever before. Weapons older than war itself were being reforged, and strategies so patient, so cunning, were being shaped that no alien counselor would see them until too late. Still, the galaxy thought they saw everything. Their fleets were vast, their scanners powerful, their empires ancient. Yet they never noticed what was truly happening behind the veil of silence. They never noticed that the trap was already being woven strand by strand around them. They never noticed that what they called weakness was in truth the calm before fire. The alien council believed the story was ended. They believed humanity had been silenced forever. Yet in that silence, a new story had begun, a story written not in words of peace, but in the language of vengeance, a story that would turn laughter into screams and arrogance into ashes. And as the council celebrated its own cruelty, they failed to see the storm rising just beyond the edge of their vision, the storm that would sweep across fleets and worlds and leave behind only ruin. For the galaxy thought humanity had bowed in shame, but Earth was not bowed. Earth was waiting. Earth was burning in silence. Earth was planning. Earth was ready. And silence was never weakness. Silence was fury waiting to break. The stars shimmered above Earth like silent witnesses as the world turned beneath them. And in that quiet night, cities carried their grief like heavy stones, yet beneath the grief was something stronger and something far more dangerous. For humanity had been insulted before, and humanity had been tested before, but never had the insult burned so deep, never had the test been so cruel. The images of the human diplomat falling in the council chamber played again and again across every screen and across every network. Children watched with wide eyes, families clenched their fists, leaders swore silently, and soldiers swore aloud that the galaxy would regret the day it mocked their kind. And in every corner of the planet, voices rose in anger, not just for vengeance, but for dignity and survival. No nation stood alone. For the first time in centuries, old rivalries were cast aside, borders became meaningless, and enemies became allies. For all of humanity now had a single enemy. That enemy was arrogance, that enemy was cruelty, that enemy was the council itself, and every alien who believed that Earth would kneel forever. Beneath oceans, silent factories came alive, forges burned, and secret mountains echoed with the thunder of hidden drills, and the black void of space lit with sparks from stations no alien I had ever seen before. Fleets that had been scattered grew larger, and more disciplined weapons that once existed only in theory became steel and plasma, and fire strategies, once written on chalkboard, became maneuvers tested again and again in simulation until no flaw remained. Alien spies searched for weakness, but found nothing. For humanity had learned to be silent and to mask strength with shadows. They saw trade move, they saw ships dock, they saw diplomats speak in measured words, yet they never saw the true preparations. For every move the aliens saw was a move designed to hide another, for every shadow held a deeper secret. The generals of alien fleets laughed over their tables carved of crystal and stone. They called humans children playing with toys. They mocked Earth's armies as primitive. They swore that no battle would last an hour. Yet their arrogance blinded them to the truth. For humans were not building weapons only. They were building a storm, one made of patience and fury. In the skies above Earth, vast ships began to move, but not openly. They drifted into deep black far from alien scanners and hid in silence, their hulls dark, their engines cold, waiting for the signal, for the call that would one day turn silence into fire. Commanders walked among their crews, speaking little, but their eyes burned with the same vow that had spread across the world, the vow that humanity would not be mocked again. The council, meanwhile, continued to celebrate their cruelty, broadcasting their victory across systems. As a warning to other species, they pointed to humans as proof of what happens when the weak demand respect. They called Earth silence obedience, and their people believed them. Their citizens cheered, their soldiers relaxed, their leaders slept with smiles. But silence was a mask, and behind that mask humanity sharpened claws. It was the silence of hunters waiting in tall grass, the silence of a storm waiting at the horizon, the silence of a world that had been pushed too far. Among the leaders of Earth, a council of their own was formed, not of arrogance, but of resolve. Every nation sent voices, every army sent commanders, and every scientist sent plans. They met in hidden chambers, not with laughter, but with grim determination, and together they wrote what would be remembered as the Plan of Fire. The plan was simple in words, but vast in reach. First, the galaxy would continue to believe Earth was weak. Second, the galaxy would lower its guard. Third, the galaxy would discover the true face of humanity too late, and by the time the council realized the truth, their fleets would already be ash, their pride would already be shattered, their power broken. And so humanity trained not just soldiers, but entire generations. Children who had once dreamed of stars now dreamed of defending them. Schools became academies, and games became simulations of war. Factories ran without sleep, and workers labored not with despair, but with fury, their hands hammering vengeance into steel. Alien patrols drifted near Earth's systems, yet saw nothing but ordinary traffic. They laughed at the silence and left, never knowing that hidden fleets shadowed them from the dark, never knowing that every movement, every ship, every patrol was being studied in silence and recorded for the day to come. The people of Earth spoke little of their pain, yet every heart carried the image of the diplomat who had begged for peace and found only fire. They remembered his cry, they remembered his fall, and they carried it like a torch burning inside them, for his voice was no longer his voice alone. It had become the voice of all mankind. Still the aliens mocked, still the council boasted. They sent messages to Earth dripping with arrogance, demanding silence, forever more demanding tribute, demanding obedience. But Earth answered with silence, only silence, the kind of silence that makes predators uneasy, though they did not yet understand why. In the far edges of the solar system, ships tested new weapons, not with grand display, but with quiet precision missiles that moved faster than alien eyes could follow, beams that cut through armor like paper, drones that swarmed like locusts, leaving nothing but ruin behind, and none of it was seen, none of it was known, until the day it would all be unleashed. The council believed the story was finished. They believed they had written the final line, yet Earth was already writing another chapter, one carved not in crystal halls, but in hidden hangars, one written not with laughter, but with steel, one shaped not with arrogance, but with patience. For the galaxy thought humanity had bowed in shame. They thought the silence was surrender. They thought Earth had become prey, yet prey does not plan traps. Prey does not sharpen claws. Prey does not wait in silence with eyes fixed on the hunter, and that was what the humans had become, hunters of a higher kind. And in the void above them, the stars watched in silence, for they knew what the aliens did not. They knew that fury cannot be mocked forever. They knew that silence cannot last forever. They knew that the storm was already building, and no fleet, no empire, no council could stop what was coming. And so the galaxy laughed, and Earth remained silent. Yet only one of them understood what silence truly meant, and only one of them was prepared for the moment it would finally break. The Galactic Council carried on with its pride, filling chambers with words of power and control, their voices echoing through halls of gold and crystal. They believed they had silenced humanity forever and turned Earth into an example for all species to fear. They sent broadcasts across the stars, showing their victory and demanding every weaker race bow to them with no resistance. Yet far away, hidden beyond their sight, humanity was already breathing differently, breathing with fire instead of fear. On Earth, the silence deepened, but it was no silence of surrender. It was the silence of forges burning without pause, the silence of academies training night and day, the silence of soldiers rehearsing maneuvers with no mistakes, tolerated leaders moved through bunkers carved beneath mountains, speaking not with arrogance, but with resolve. Scientists worked with steady hands, creating designs never before imagined, weapons that could pierce through alien armor, tactics that would twist through enemy fleets like knives through fabric. In orbit around the moon, great structures floated, their surfaces dark and invisible to scanners. They looked like drifting shadows, but within their walls, thousands of workers prepared ships with engines that hummed like caged beasts waiting for release. Every bolt tightened carried the weight of vengeance. Every engine lit carried the memory of the murdered diplomat. Human generals studied alien fleets like hunters studying prey. Every detail mattered, the way alien ships turned, the way their weapons rotated, the gaps between their formations. Nothing was ignored, every weakness cataloged, every arrogance noted. No battle will be fought blind, for when humanity struck, it would strike with knowledge far greater than any alien general believed possible. Still the council boasted, they mocked humanity's silence. Even more, they told their worlds that Earth had learned its place. They laughed that humans had returned to their dirt and their oceans and their fragile homes. Alien children grew up repeating the words that humans were nothing. Alien soldiers believed the war was already won. Alien rulers slept without fear, but beneath their arrogance something was already moving, something they could not yet see. For across the black void, fleets began to gather, and silent ships, with hulls painted in shadows, moved without beacons their courses, hidden their numbers, concealed commanders, gave no speeches to the stars. They spoke only to their crews in voices heavy with promise. They reminded them of the cruelty done in the council chamber. They reminded them of the flames that had consumed one of their own, and they promised that those flames would one day return to the council itself. On Earth, every person carried a part of the burden. Farmers worked knowing their food fed armies. Workers built knowing their hands forged vengeance. Teachers spoke knowing their words shaped future leaders. There was no division, no argument, no distraction. Humanity was united in fury, and this unity gave them strength no alien empire could imagine. Meanwhile, alien scouts flew near Earth systems, sending back reports filled with arrogance. They saw trade ships, they saw satellites, they saw calm and quiet. They returned with laughter, reporting that humans were broken, that no danger remained. Their leaders accepted these reports with smiles, never questioning why. Silence continued, for silence felt like weakness to them, never realizing that silence can be the sharpest weapon of all. The preparations grew larger. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt blazed with secret life. Massive weapons were assembled piece by piece. Drones were tested in swarms, their wings spreading like storms in the void. Commanders watched every test, recording every success, marking every failure, until failure no longer existed. Entire strategies were rehearsed again and again in virtual skies and in empty space, until precision was perfect. Across the galaxy, whispers began to rise, whispers from smaller species who saw something the Council did not. They noticed the way humanity no longer sent envoys. They noticed how human ships disappeared from charts. They noticed the silence, and some of them felt a tremor of unease, but they dared not speak aloud, for the Council demanded silence. And to question the Council meant ruin, yet deep in their hearts they wondered if Earth's silence was something different, something deadly. The alien generals laughed over maps of the stars, moving their pieces like a game. They bragged of how they would one day take Earth's oceans as trophies, its mountains as mines, its skies as prisons. But not one of them saw the shadow that already crept behind their backs. Not one of them realized that the game board itself was shifting piece by piece until the hunters themselves had become prey. Far beyond sight in black space, human fleets lay in wait, engines dimmed, weapons ready. Each captain stared at their screens with patience. Each crew sat ready with fire in their hearts. Orders had not yet come, but they would come, and when they came, the galaxy would never again laugh at Earth. The Council prepared festivals celebrating their own power, declaring that peace had been secured by their strength. They claimed no rebellion would ever rise again. They claimed no voice would ever challenge them. Their citizens danced, their soldiers drank, their rulers cheered, and not one of them realized that their celebration was the calm before the storm. For in the silence of Earth, there was no peace, only preparation. In the silence of Earth, there was no fear, only fury. In the silence of Earth, there was no surrender, only patience. And when patience ends, silence breaks. And when silence breaks, storms rise. And when storms rise, even the strongest empires can burn. The galaxy believed humanity had been broken. The galaxy believed humanity was done. But humanity believed something else. Humanity believed the day of fire was coming. And when it came, it would not come softly. It would come like thunder, shaking the stars and tearing the pride of the Council into ash. So the question was no longer if the storm would break. The question was only when and how, and who would still be standing when it was over. The night of the galaxy stretched wide, and endless stars glimmered like frozen fire across the void, while the Galactic Council bathed in their arrogance, never suspecting that shadows moved just beyond their reach. Alien generals gathered in their chambers, drinking to their victories, mocking the silence of Earth, boasting that the human race was finished and irrelevant. Yet even as they laughed, the first sparks of something new were already flickering in the dark. From the asteroid belt, a signal was sent. It was not a voice, not a broadcast, but a silent pulse invisible to the eyes of alien scanners. The pulse carried orders, and those orders were received by fleets hidden in the black. Each captain nodded with grim resolve, and engines that had slept in silence for months awoke with a slow thunder vibrating through metal hulls. The stars themselves seemed to tremble at the awakening. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Admiral Reyes stood with eyes that carried the weight of a whole species. Behind him, officers whispered reports, but his gaze remained steady. On the endless night, his words carried through the command deck like steel. He reminded them of what was taken. He reminded them of the flames that had consumed their diplomat. He reminded them of the arrogance that spat on peace, and he promised them that tonight's silence ends. The first strike was not a battle. It was a whisper, a shadow slipping through alien patrol lines, unnoticed drones with black wings unfolded in the dark, moving like flocks of crows. Each drone, smaller than a fighter, faster than the eye could follow. Their purpose was not destruction, but vision. They slipped through sensor grids, infiltrated communication relays, and watched every alien movement with cold patience, every detail recorded, every secret stored, until human commanders knew the paths of alien fleets better than the aliens themselves. Meanwhile, in the Council City, towers of glass and light glowed across the alien capital streets. Filled with laughter and music, their people celebrated their supposed dominance. Banners of victory hung in the skies, and no one noticed the faint distortions in orbit above, faint ripples in space, where cloaked human vessels drifted like hunters circling prey. Deep inside those vessels, soldiers prepared their weapons in silence. They wore armor forged from alloys unknown to the Council, armor that bent light around their forms, helmets that turned them into faceless shadows. Their weapons were compact and deadly, silent railguns, whispering death across distance, plasma charges humming with power, knives forged for close war. Every soldier moved like a storm contained in human shape, waiting only for release. The alien generals still held their meetings, laughing at the primitive tactics of humans. One boasted that a single fleet could erase Earth in hours. Another mocked that human ships were like toys and their weapons like sparks before real fire. They played games of power, moving symbols on their maps. Yet those maps never showed the shadows that already surrounded them. Back in the hidden human command rooms, holograms glowed with alien fleet positions, every detail mapped, every patrol logged, every weakness underlined. Admiral Reyes raised his hand and pointed not at the strongest fleet, not at the most defended world, but at the supply lines, thin threads of life that fed the alien war machine. He spoke one word: strike, and in the void the first human offensive began. Ships surged from shadows, engines igniting with silent fire. They descended upon unguarded convoys, freighters heavy with fuel, carriers hauling munitions, transports filled with resources. None were prepared for the storm that fell upon them. Human torpedoes struck with surgical precision. Explosions lit the void in blinding waves, while human ships vanished again into the black before alarms could even rise. Entire supply lines burned, leaving alien fleets stranded, hungry and blind. The Council was shaken. Reports poured in. Confused and fragmented fleets cried for support, but the Council dismissed them as isolated attacks, a rebellion from pirates or smaller races. Nothing to fear. They laughed away the warnings, declaring no human fleet could move so far, so fast, so unseen. Yet in their arrogance, they failed to see the pattern forming with every strike. In secret bases across the outer rim, alien outposts fell. Silent human forces moved like ghosts. Soldiers landed under cloaks of darkness, disabling defenses with precision, taking control of key systems. Without raising alarms, prisoners were freed. Oppressed species whispered rumors of human shadows appearing in the night, then vanishing like myths, leaving behind hope and fear. But humanity did not announce itself. There were no grand speeches, no declarations of war. There was only silence followed by fire. And then silence again. Fleets burned, stations vanished, commanders disappeared, and all the while the Council demanded answers. But none came. Their own arrogance blinded them to the truth. For the humans had chosen their path carefully. They would not strike the heart first. They would bleed the edges. They would cut the veins. They would starve the beast before they faced it directly. And in this strategy lay their greatest weapon: patience. Admiral Reyes watched as maps shifted, alien fleets stumbling, confused, without supply lines, their formations breaking, their arrogance crumbling slowly, piece by piece. He knew this was only the beginning. The real storm had not yet come. This was only the first whisper of the vengeance humanity carried. On the alien capital, festivals still burned, lights still glowed, music still echoed through the towers, but a shadow had entered their celebration. Whispers spread in alleys that fleets were vanishing, whispers that humans had returned, whispers that silence was not weakness, but war waiting to rise. Alien rulers dismissed these rumors, yet fear had already taken root in their people. In the vastness of space, the humans moved like hunters in the dark, every strike carefully chosen, every blow cutting deeper. The galaxy that once laughed now began to wonder what horror was growing unseen, what fire was being forged in silence, what storm was about to fall upon them. And so the question grew louder in every shadow and in every whisper, if this was only the beginning, what would come when humanity finally chose to show itself in full force. The alien council chamber, once filled with arrogant laughter, now echoed with unease as generals argued over reports that made no sense. Fleets that should have been invincible were silent, supply lines that once stretched strong across the stars were cut like threads, and colonies whispered of human shadows, striking from the dark and vanishing before defenses could react. One general slammed his clawed fist against the table, declaring that humans could never achieve this, that the losses must be lies or sabotage from within. Another hissed in fear, whispering that perhaps humanity had hidden allies, that perhaps other oppressed species had chosen to rise with them. But the High Council dismissed these voices. They declared it impossible. They clung to their belief that humanity was still weak, still primitive, still nothing more than insects. Yet outside their chamber, the truth grew sharper with every hour. Across distant systems, alien commanders stared at blank screens where their fleets should have appeared. They listened to silence where convoys once reported in. They ordered their soldiers to prepare, but found no supplies, no weapons, no fuel. Their empire was beginning to suffocate under the weight of invisible hands. In the human fleet, Admiral Reyes stood over the glowing map of alien territory. His officers spoke in low voices, carrying news of success. After success, their raids had crippled 3 more supply routes. Their drones had mapped weaknesses in alien defenses. Their soldiers had freed yet another hidden colony from alien control. And yet the Admiral did not smile. His face remained like stone, because he knew this was only the first stage. He raised his hand, pointing toward the galactic core, where the alien capital gleamed like a jewel of arrogance, surrounded by fleets and walls of fire. He told his officers that humanity would not strike there, not yet. Instead, they would cut deeper, bleed the enemy, until every defense was nothing more than an empty shell, and then only then would they reveal their fury. In secret camps, human soldiers trained harder than ever. They learned to fight in zero gravity, to move as shadows through alien cities, to turn every environment into a battlefield. Their instructors reminded them of the diplomat, burned alive, of the laughter that echoed in the council hall, of the humiliation humanity had endured for generations. Every soldier carried this memory as fire in their chest and steel in their hands. Meanwhile, whispers spread across the galaxy faster than fleets could move. Oppressed races who once bowed in silence now spoke in hushed tones of human vengeance. They told stories of fleets that vanished in the night, of soldiers who struck without fear, of voices that promised freedom one day. Soon the Council would no longer face only humanity. They would face the rising courage of all they had crushed. Back in the alien capital, panic began to slip through the walls of power. Merchants complained of missing shipments. Commanders begged for reinforcements. Civilians whispered that the humans had returned stronger than ever. Yet the Council still refused to admit weakness. They gathered their strongest fleets and prepared a demonstration. They declared that one decisive blow would crush humanity once and for all. That fleet, the largest in their history, moved with thunder across the stars. Battleships stretching like mountains, carriers holding swarms of fighters, weapons charged with firepower to level worlds. The Council declared that this fleet would burn the Earth itself, that it would erase humanity in one single night. Never again would humans dare to rise. But as that fleet advanced through space, cloaked human drones followed them unseen, recording every movement, every frequency, every vulnerability. Admiral Reyes studied the data in silence, his mind a storm of calculation. His officers waited tense as steel until he finally spoke, not with rage, but with cold certainty. He told them that this was the moment the trap had been waiting for. And so humanity set the board. Every strike before had been a step toward this moment. every convoy destroyed, every outpost silenced, every supply chain cut, had been to prepare for this single night. The alien fleet believed they marched to victory, yet they marched into the jaws of something they could not see. In the silence of deep space, human ships waited, their engines cold, their weapons armed, their crews calm, with deadly focus like hunters hidden in the forest waiting for prey. To step into the circle alien sensors scanned, but found nothing. Alien captains laughed, declaring the path clear and safe, their arrogance blinding them to the shadows already closing. The human fleet moved like phantoms, surrounding the alien armada from all sides. Admiral Reyes gave no speech. He gave only one command: unleash, and the void exploded with fury. From every shadow, human weapons fired, railguns tore through alien hulls, plasma burned across armored shields, torpedoes cut through the dark like arrows of fire. Alien ships reeled in chaos, their formations shattered before they could even react. Fighters swarmed in panic, crashing into each other as human squadrons cut through them like knives. The night of the galaxy was lit with storms of flame. On the alien capital, the Council watched in disbelief as reports flooded, in one after another the invincible fleet was under attack. Fleets that should have crushed Earth were burning. Piece by piece, commanders screamed for help, but no help came, for their supply lines were already gone, their reserves already shattered. The trap had closed, and there was no escape. Human soldiers boarded alien vessels, moving like shadows through corridors, silent and merciless, every step a reminder of the fire that had started this war. Alien crews fell in fear, their arrogance stripped away, replaced only with terror. The humans were no longer seen as weak, no longer dismissed as primitive. They were now seen as hunters and executioners, and the galaxy trembled at the sight. As the battle raged, Admiral Reyes stood unmoving, his eyes locked on the collapsing fleet. His officers reported victory after victory, but he raised his hand, silencing them, for he knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. Humanity had drawn blood, but the true war was yet to come. The Council would not yield easily. They would throw more fleets, more weapons, more cruelty, and humanity would have to be ready for every storm. Yet in that moment, in the burning wreckage of the largest alien armada, the galaxy learned a truth it had long denied. Silence was not weakness, patience was not fear. Humanity had risen, and their fury had only begun to awaken. The remnants of the alien fleet drifted like broken stars through the void, their once proud banners of victory now charred and torn, signals of panic spreading across command networks as the Council realized a nightmare that had struck their arrogance. The generals who had laughed at humans now trembled, their claws gripping consoles, their voices rising in terror as reports poured in of lost ships, destroyed stations, and fleets cut off from supply lines, their empire shaken to its core. On Earth, Admiral Reyes stood before the glowing map of the galaxy, his eyes scanning every corner, every system, every fleet of the enemy. The human forces had struck with precision, cutting alien power in half. Yet the Admiral knew the Council would not rest. They would rebuild. They would send more fleets. They would strike with every weapon at their disposal, and humanity had to be ready not just to fight, but to destroy any threat before it could rise again. In orbit above distant planets, human fleets moved like shadows in a dance of death, their engines hidden, their weapons charged. Drones swarmed ahead, mapping defenses, scouting for weaknesses, every maneuver rehearsed thousands of times in simulations, yet executed with the precision of hunters stalking prey. No alien captain suspected that they were already surrounded by hunters far smarter and faster than anything they had imagined. Meanwhile, the alien council gathered in secret chambers behind walls of light and crystal, their faces pale, their voices trembling as they tried to devise a plan to salvage their empire. They sent orders across the galaxy, demanding reinforcements, pleading for obedience, issuing ultimatums, but humanity did not respond. Humanity had already decided the moment of final reckoning was near, and silence remained their greatest weapon. In hidden bases on Earth, soldiers trained relentlessly, learning to fight in zero gravity through narrow corridors on hostile planets across the cold void of space. Every simulation mirrored the strategies that had defeated the alien fleets. Already every tactic was honed, every move sharpened. The humans became shadows of death, moving unseen, waiting only for the signal from their commanders. to strike with finality. The alien generals debated furiously, their arrogance shattered, but their pride refusing to bend. They argued over where to strike first, which fleet to rebuild, which system to reinforce. Yet every moment of indecision cost them more ships, more supplies, more soldiers, for humanity had already observed every weakness, every flaw, and had plotted moves that could not be countered. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the flagship, the stars stretching infinite before him. His officers reported progress in whispered tones, for the human voice had learned the language of patience. Every report carried proof that the Council's fleets were scattered and broken, yet he remained calm, for he knew the true battle was not in small strikes. It was in the final wave, the moment when humanity would reveal its full fury and the galaxy would finally understand the cost of arrogance. On alien worlds, civilians whispered of fires that moved, unseen fleets disappearing without warning, and colonies freed by humans moving like ghosts. The Council tried to deny these reports, but rumors spread faster than ships could travel. Fear rooted itself in the hearts of aliens who had once considered humans weak. They began to question their leaders, their generals, their entire empire, and in their doubt, humanity gained strength unseen. Across the void, human engineers tested weapons that could level stations in seconds, missiles that tracked without error, drones that moved faster than any fighter, and railguns that cut through armor like paper. Every weapon was a promise, every test a reminder of the fury that had begun in silence and would end only when the Council had fallen completely. The Alien Council attempted a counteroffensive, sending new fleets designed to overwhelm human positions. Yet every move was anticipated, every weakness known, every attack parried before it began. Human forces moved like flowing water around these attacks, avoiding unnecessary losses and striking only when victory was certain. Every engagement leaving aliens stunned and demoralized. Admiral Reyes gave one final command to prepare for the ultimate strike. Fleets hidden across the galaxy converged silently, engines dimmed, weapons armed, and crews silent in anticipation. The time had come to move beyond raids and demonstrations. The Council had to see the full scope of humanity's wrath, to feel the fire that had been building in silence for centuries. In the shadows of space, human ships waited their presence, undetected, alien sensors scanning, but finding nothing, and generals trembling in their chambers, imagining threats that they could not see. Each fleet positioned to strike simultaneously, like a storm breaking across the stars, with no escape for those who had once thought themselves untouchable. On Earth, citizens watched the skies in quiet pride, for their soldiers, their engineers, their scientists had crafted a plan so perfect that no empire could resist it. The people of humanity whispered not of fear, but of vengeance, not of hope, but of certainty that this time the galaxy would know the price of mocking them. The diplomat burned in council chambers long ago now carried humanity's fury across light years in a single promise of fire. Meanwhile, the Alien Council scrambled, desperate for intelligence, their fleets incomplete, their systems vulnerable. Yet they refused to surrender to reason. They clung to arrogance, hoping for miracles. Yet the storm had already formed in the void surrounding them, invisible but inevitable. And with every second the humans waited, the trap closed tighter. Admiral Reyes watched as final coordinates aligned, every fleet in position, every weapon locked, every soldier ready. He gave one command that would change the course of the galaxy, a single word that echoed across ships, through every communication line, silently, yet understood without hesitation by every human in every vessel: the signal to strike, and the galaxy held its breath. And in that moment, humanity moved from silence to fury, from patience to destruction. Fleets that had hidden for months revealed themselves, engines igniting in unison, torpedoes firing, drones swarming, fighters crashing into alien ships. With unstoppable force, the Council's fleets burned from within, supply lines obliterated, defenses cut apart, and every alien world that had once laughed trembled at the reality of what they had created in silence. The Council realized too late the depth of their mistake. The humans they had mocked were no longer weak, no longer fragile, no longer primitive. Every move calculated, every strike deliberate and lethal. Their empire shaking on the foundations of arrogance that had once seemed unbreakable. And as the first of the great alien capitals began to burn, Admiral Reyes knew the final stage was only beginning. Humanity's fury had ignited, and nothing in the galaxy would ever again underestimate the quiet patience of a species pushed too far. The galaxy trembled as fires erupted across alien capitals, the arrogance of centuries crumbling into ash, while human fleets moved with flawless precision, striking from shadows. No one could see the stars lit with explosions, and yet humanity's ships vanished into the void, leaving only ruin behind. The Council's confidence shattered. Their generals panicked as reports poured in of fleets, destroyed stations, leveled worlds burning, and every victory they had ever claimed turned to dust in their hands. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Reyes stood, unmoving, his eyes locked on the holographic display, showing the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Every strike reported, every enemy vessel neutralized, yet he gave no word of triumph, for he knew the final act was still to come. The true fury of humanity had not yet been revealed, for the Council had underestimated patience and silence, and the consequence was about to be total annihilation. In hidden orbital stations, human engineers activated weapons that could collapse entire planetary defenses, entire cities, entire fleets in a single coordinated strike. Every device, hidden, invisible, untraceable for months, had waited for this moment. Every soldier on every vessel knew their role in the ultimate plan. Their hearts beat with a mixture of pride and fire, every movement executed as if the galaxy itself held its breath, watching the hunters become unstoppable. Alien generals scrambled, attempting to regroup, desperate for orders. Their ships scattered and confused, supply lines severed, their strongest fleets broken. Their soldiers, terrified, they ordered retreats that were impossible, commands that could not be followed. As the human assault reached every corner of the systems, their arrogance stripped away and replaced with terror, as the galaxy's most powerful species realized that they had been blind and the humans they had mocked were unstoppable. Admiral Reyes gave the final command. The word passed through fleets across the void. Instantaneously, engines roared to life, weapons fired with precision unmatched, torpedoes tore through enemy vessels, fighters swarmed with lethal speed, drones moved like shadows, cutting communications and destroying any hope of coordination. Alien fleets fell apart from the inside, every attempt at resistance crushed with silent efficiency. Humanity moved like one mind, like one purpose, unrelenting and unstoppable. On the alien capitals, civilians watched in horror as buildings trembled, lights flickered, and entire fleets disappeared before their eyes. No warning, no speeches, no mercy, only the precise and inevitable strike of humanity's long-prepared fury. Whispers of the burned diplomat spread across the cities, a reminder that this had begun as vengeance, but now had become total war, and no empire could endure it. Every corner of the galaxy felt the force of humanity's patience, turned to action, their strategy flawless, their execution perfect, their fury unstoppable. Entire worlds that had once scorned humans now burned as examples of what happens when silence becomes fury and when patience becomes power. Fleets vanished, entire battle stations shattered, and the Council's pride collapsed faster than anyone could comprehend. Back on Earth, people watched in quiet unity, for their soldiers, engineers, and scientists had delivered the ultimate response. The galaxy would now remember why humanity had survived so long, why silence had never meant weakness, why patience had always been a weapon, and why the flames of vengeance could not be stopped once fully unleashed. Every citizen carried the knowledge that they had changed history and that no empire would dare mock them again. Admiral Reyes monitored the final engagements, his eyes scanning every system, every vessel, every move of the alien leaders, desperate to escape, yet finding no path. Humanity had anticipated every retreat, every last-minute maneuver, every hidden reserve they had planned for it all. Nothing remained unaccounted for. The humans had foreseen everything and executed it flawlessly, with no hesitation, no mercy, and no error. The Council itself collapsed in chaos as their leaders fell into panic. Generals accused one another of incompetence. Diplomats pleaded for mercy. Fleets tried to regroup, but every attempt failed, for humanity had cut every line of escape, destroyed every weapon they could reach, and now only shadows remained waiting for the final order to strike the last bastions of arrogance and cruelty. In the void, the humans moved in silent precision, cutting off the remaining strongholds. Alien fleets floundered as their captains realized too late that every assumption about human weakness had been a lie, every mockery and insult to their own destruction they fought. But the victory had already been decided. The humans were not only stronger, they were unstoppable, patient, and deadly, and their fury unmatched. Admiral Reyes finally gave the order to end the campaign. The word carried across every vessel, every soldier, every drone. The final strike was delivered. Energy beams cut through the alien command stations. Weapons of incredible power shattered remaining fleets. Entire capitals burned. In coordinated fury, the Council's empire fell like a house of glass, broken by the inevitable force of patience and preparation. Their arrogance ended, and the galaxy would never forget it. On alien world, survivors whispered of humans who had appeared and vanished like shadow ships that could not be tracked, weapons that struck without warning, entire fleets destroyed by unseen hands. They called them monsters. Yet no monster had ever been so precise, so patient, so unstoppable. Every story carried fear and awe for humanity, had revealed its true face. The galaxy would never again underestimate them. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet, for humans understood that true victory came not from noise or arrogance, but from preparation, patience, and the courage to act when the time was right. Engineers repaired ships, soldiers cleaned weapons, scientists studied the stars. Humanity had won, but they knew vigilance must remain, for the galaxy would remember their fury and fear, their patience and precision, and the memory of what silence can become. Admiral Reyes finally allowed himself to breathe, watching reports of the last enemy strongholds fall as officers nodded silently together. They had carried out the plan flawlessly. Their patience rewarded their training, perfected. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans it had mocked were now the most powerful force it had ever encountered, and the council that had burned a diplomat alive was no more, their arrogance destroyed by those they had underestimated. And so humanity stood triumphant in the stars, their fleets scattered, but ready, their people united, and their enemies humbled. The galaxy would never again laugh at Earth or its silence, for the flames of vengeance had revealed a truth no empire could deny. Patience can be the deadliest weapon, preparation the most precise art, and fury the most unstoppable force. And from that day forward, humanity's name would echo through the stars as a species never to be mocked, never to be underestimated, and always ready to defend itself with unstoppable force.